going to compliment you the entire time. He might be a little fresh.
The keystone in the arch of Star Wars.
It's a show that I dearly love and admire, so thanks for having me.
Sorry, I'm getting like emotional.
And you got this hulking, scary dude with the big nose and the perfect hair.
I understand. This is a safe space. This is a safe space between you and I and all of your viewers.
Cassie and Jim on the beach, and people are like, no. I can literally hear people out there, no.
Rogue One was awesome. I love the Han Solo movie, and then of course I love The Mandalorian.
And like getting to talk to fans face to face and learn their names and just, get to hear their stories.
And in the world of Star Wars, there's a bunch of people who look different. There are different species. There's lizard men. There's psychic baby swamp monsters.
I joke that the best thing about writing Princess Leia is everybody knows who she is, and the worst thing about writing Princess Leia is everyone knows who she is.
And also you get Ewoks, and I am definitely a lover of Ewoks.
You're listening to Around the Galaxy.
Yes, it's a good thing. It's a great thing.
Well, welcome to Around the Galaxy. This is episode number 134. Thank you so much for joining us. If you're watching this now live, that means that you are a patron. Thank you so much for doing that. And if you're not a patron, we'll just go to atgcast.com and you can find out how you can get a weekly link to be a part of the show. I mean, you'll see probably during the show, we'll be reading comments and questions and engaging the audience as we talk to our guests. And every week I am so lucky to be able to bring you a conversation with somebody with a Star Wars story, a super fan, a celebrity, a musician, an actor, an author, or a fellow podcaster. And that's what we're doing today. Today, I am extremely happy to be able to bring you a conversation with Bryan from Pink Milk Podcast. I am just going to bring him in. We'll skip all the Pete rambling and let's just get to some of the good parts. I'm going to bring him in. Ladies and gentlemen, Bryan from Pink Milk. Bryan, how are you?
Hello there. I am fantastic. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I'm excited.
I'm excited to have you with us. So for the people who may not know you or Pink Milk, maybe give us a little bit of your background.
So I am an 80s kid. I have no idea about a world without Star Wars. I have no idea about not being a super fan. I have no idea about ever leaving Star Wars. It's something inside of me. It's just always been there. But unlike Ray, it's always been awake. It's always been sitting here.
There was no awakening. It's always been there.
Yeah. Forever and ever and ever. It's my thing. It's my thing for sure. Yeah.
That's great. So Pink Milk is a podcast that you started how long ago?
It'll be 2 years in November, on November 11th. It'll be 2 years. Wow. Yeah.
And where is Pink Milk? What's your sort of niche in the fandom?
So we are an LGBTQ plus podcast. So we always talk Star Wars queerly. And 2 years ago when we started it, I had been wanting to do a podcast forever, but probably like everyone, my voice is too nasally. I have nothing to say, and all the insecurities that we all do. But he's 11 now, so he's going to be a teen. Tomorrow he's going to be 25 and move out. But because he's 11, he wants to be a YouTuber, just like probably every other 11-year-old kid out there.
Yep.
So I was like, it was enough to push me into, I want to go see what this world is like so I can help him and encourage him to do those things. And I was turning 40 and I was like, you know what? A zero. I'm here for a zero. I love zeros. And it was going to be a new start. But when we first started, my husband, Tom, hosts the show with me, and he is a casual fan at best, as he's been named from our listeners. And I thought that was what I thought the premise of the show was going to be. I was like, I'm not the only one who's married to a non-fan who's forced to listen to us all the time. And so that's what we started. And then it quickly turned into something else. And we've adopted 3 kids through the foster system, and we talk a lot about them. And the show kind of took a different turn. People weren't really gravitating towards that. They were really interested in our found family. And I think we are really honest, and we were very open about lots of things. And as the show's gone on, I've opened veins and talked about things that I never thought I would ever talk about, but I heal myself and all those things through Star Wars. So it just kind of was natural. And it's, so now we talk a lot about found family, but over the course of recording, it was probably that it was in that first year we, after Mandalorian started, I had no idea. I was like, I love Boba Fett, don't get me wrong. But when that show was announced, I was like, oh God, I don't need a Mandalorian show. Yeah. Like this is what I'm going to have to deal with. Yep. And I was like, they're all great. And my God, I love the show like so incredibly much. And I was completely taken aback by it. And I find the show to be very queer. I think Din Djarin is a queer character. And I had never seen myself in Star Wars the way I feel I see myself in Din Djarin for lots of reasons. And so I was like, oh, wow, this is awesome. And during the Mandalorian, we were on a Blue Bantha Milk Co. with Matt and Sean. They had us on to celebrate Pride Month. And that was when the moment that it really hit, I was like, oh, people are like actually interested that we're gay. And I didn't hide it by any stretch of the imagination, but I never really pushed it exactly because I was like, most people don't want to listen to a bunch of gay dudes, and that's trauma that I'm stuck with or whatever. But it started to change things. And then we did a Pride episode with someone, and I realized halfway through this podcast that I had never spoken to another gay person about Star Wars. And it was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. It was really awesome. And then that led to doing a roundtable discussion of The Mandalorian once it was done. And I was like, I can't be the only one who sees all this queer coding in the show. Yeah. So we probably had by the end of the episodes, there was 12 or 13 different people that had come on and shared their queer story, and it just changed. Yeah. And I was like, Tom, I can't go back to the way the show used to be. Yeah. No, and it's what's interesting to me, and maybe let's talk about the phrase coding, right? Because as look, gosh, there's no way to say it. I'm just a straight white guy. I'm boring, right? Yeah. but it's interesting when I see great not boring.
Not boring, but whatever. Yeah. But we see in social media a lot of conversation, because for me, and I think the best thing about my Star Wars journey over the last couple of years has been really discovering other people and other perspectives, and the way people come in and out of the fandom from different perspectives. And I've seen the phrase, whether it's queer coding or Asian coding or whatever sort of perspective somebody's trying to apply to a show. And it's an interesting thing because if I understand it correctly, coding is a different way of putting a story out there or putting a context behind something without sort of it being, this is your gay character, you get this guy, right? It's sort of, maybe if you could explain that perspective to people like me who don't fully understand it.
So for me, we'll just use The Mandalorian, for example. Din Djarin isn't written explicitly as queer, but he is a character who Mandalorians are already a minority, especially by the time The Mandalorian starts. You've heard about this, the Great Purge. You've heard about the Trail of the Tears, or I'm blanking on what the Song of the Tears, and he was someone who, when we meet him, he is very unsure of who he is. He's not really, he doesn't believe fully that he's a Mandalorian yet, because he was, a foundling, as we find out. And I feel like so many of us as gay people, we feel trapped in this society that we know we're different, but we don't exactly know why we're different yet. And everyone knows the charm of coming out of the closet these days, everyone knows that. But when you're in this armor until you come out, and you're pretending to be this other thing because you don't want society to judge you a certain way. And I feel that very much with The Mandalorian. He hides behind this armor that he has. He hides behind this identity of a bounty hunter that very early on we quickly realize he doesn't exactly, he's not as harsh about it as some of these other bounty hunters that we use. And so he like butches himself up. So that's another term that, like, especially growing up in the 90s, like, you have to be as masculine as you can. And, you put on this show to hide who you really are and to hide your emotions. And that whole first season in particular, he meets Grogu and he just slowly is like changing out his armor and taking it down. And so coding is just like, he's not written as a gay character, but there's so many tropes written in him that we can relate to as gay people. And we don't get any representation really hardly at all in media. So you have to find it other places. And that's kind of, for me, what Star Wars has always been, long before I knew what the word queer coding was, long before I really knew I was gay. Like, you kind of always know. But, I came out, or I was born in the 80s. I was born in 1979. And so I grew up in the 80s, and I was a young kid, and it was the height of the AIDS epidemic, and it was all over TV. And I really knew that's who I was. I don't know what it was, but I just really latched onto that. And I remember telling my mom, one day I'm going to be up there with the signs, because that's me. And so I don't know how I knew that was me, but I did.
Yeah.
And then I was so young, and you just saw, oh God, I'm taking it downhill real quick. I just saw all these people dying, unfortunately, and the world was telling them that they deserved it.
Yeah.
And I felt very different. And Star Wars was this thing that I felt like I fit in. Like, everyone lived in, you go to the cantina or Jabba's palace, probably more specifically for me, and so many different kinds of people are there that everyone's just treated the same, because it's such a diverse galaxy that the idea that you're different is not interesting anymore. Just whatever species you are, who cares? I've seen 5 of you. And so I really related to that. And I found a lot of freedom in that, and then to learn this idea of hope and all the things that would come with it later. But
no, I think that's great. And it's interesting to, that's one of the reasons I love doing the show, is because I get to hear different perspectives on Star Wars. I mean, for me growing up, it was a great adventure story, but there is something about it though that absolutely grabs you. Do you think it's the way the story's written, or do you think because it is? I mean, there's all those other elements about Star Wars that the modern day myth and all the sort of traditional things. Do you think you think there's something with that as well that might have been able to pull you in and make you more comfortable in that space?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I think for me, the thing that I love so much about Star Wars is the helmet, the idea of a helmet. And you never know what's underneath that helmet. And different characters see different people. Darth Vader, you have most of the galaxy seeing him as this evil, horrible person, which he did become. You see the Emperor and Tarkin, for that matter, treating him like a chump. He's nothing. And then you have Luke Skywalker, who sees a hero inside of him somehow, some way. And I love the looseness of Star Wars. I love that Star Wars creates these myths and these worlds and these events that just happened, and they don't really tell you what they are, and it makes it feel very, very real. And because it's written loose enough, I think so many of us see ourselves in all of those characters for different reasons. Today, unfortunately, those differences seem to divide people instead of doing what like you're doing, going, let me find out why you like Luke Skywalker this way. And find and build a relationship out of those differences. I think that's what I love about Star Wars more than anything.
Yeah, that's it's. Let me ask you about that, because do you feel any sort of? I mean, I would say over the last year that I've really been aware of your podcast and your presence in social media. It's also been a bit of it's a tumultuous time online. I'm putting it very politely, very kindly. Do you feel like you have an additional responsibility as being, I would say, one of the leading LGBTQ plus shows out there? Do you feel any additional pressure, or are you just like, hey, this is part of what we're doing, and we're going to run with it, and hopefully people enjoy it?
when I start, I mean, I really knew nothing about, so I'm not gonna. When I tell you I knew nothing about social media when we started, I knew nothing about social media. We launched our Twitter, and by we I mean me, launched my Twitter account like in right before Rise of Skywalker.
Okay.
And I went through all the stages of grief live on the podcast. During that, I had lots to process, but one of my favorite things was Rey Skywalker, like one of my favorite moments in all of Star Wars. And so I was very excited, and I quickly realized that was not a popular opinion. I realized that a lot of people very quickly had a lot to say about it. I was like, but I think as time went on, I'm really I feel very, very fortunate that we are far more successful than I ever dreamt that we could be. And I've learned a lot as we've done this show. Like more than half of our listenership are all identify as straight people, I think. And maybe it's because I've become really open. Like I said, I've talked about stuff that I never thought I would, but I realized that, especially during 2020, like I've been very lucky to have people open back up to me and send me DMs or send us emails and say, thank you for sharing this. This is my story. And it started, I don't want to say responsibility because that sounds like super egotistical, but I feel like very, like a dad. I feel like a dad to I feel the responsibility of people. I honor that people open themselves up the way they have. And so I feel a level of respect that I need to make sure that I always maintain, because I've heard some really deep, very personal stories from people, and I cherish that. And I'm honored that, somehow people trust me with some of the stuff they've shared,
Yeah.
So that if that answers your question.
No, it does. It absolutely does. And how do you deal with, I for those that follow me know that I don't want to say I'm a pot stirrer, but I certainly am the first to call out when I see, bad takes, right? And honestly, potentially dangerous information. And I don't mean like dangerous as far as vaccinations or whatever. Like I see what I'm talking about, dangerous in that it can stir up people to become hostile is a very strong word, but aggressive towards other people. So I call that out. How do you deal with that? Because I'm dealing it from my perspective, and you're seeing it probably multiplied in some cases.
So we also have, this is going to come a little backwards, but I promise I'm going to bring it back to this. We also have a live stream.
Right.
That we started. I had said earlier when we did these roundtables, everything was changed for me. So I started with two people that I met on the roundtable. We had never met before, but we really, I bonded with all of these people. We still all talk a lot, but we started this live stream more for deeper dives because they're also Star Wars fans, and we talk about a lot of queer issues and stuff like that. And I wanted different perspectives. But my Twitter experience is serving pink milk. Like, I really don't see a lot of that. I'm really, really, really lucky. Mm-hmm. So some of my co-hosts bring stuff to my attention. And honestly, good or bad, I stay out of most of it because I just don't care. Yeah. Most of the time, I shouldn't say I don't care. That's not but some of the stuff that I'm like, I don't need to comment on your take of Ben Solo. Of Ben. That's been a big one this week. I don't feel the need to comment on that. We get some stuff thrown our way sometimes, and that I'll talk about. But I try my best to, and I've done this in my life in general. When I'm met with aggression about being gay or whatever, I usually ask questions. I try not to combat it back with fists. But I try to have my, a shaking hand. I'm like, well, why do you feel this way? Like, let's figure out why you think that way. And sometimes I learn that there's no point in having a conversation. And so I leave it be. Like comments on YouTube. We get more comments on YouTube than anything. There's so many, your children should be taken away from you. How you can't be gay, like all this stuff. And that I leave. Yeah. Because I'm like, John Doe, if you want to represent yourself that way to the world, then I'm going to show your face to everybody else. Right.
Yep.
I don't know. I just avoid it.
That's probably probably the best way to go. And I think you're right. I think there's somebody said on my show a couple of weeks ago, nobody's ever gone onto social media and said, I'm going to go and get my mind changed, right? You're never going to have that sort of situation. And again, it's that I call it sort of the keyboard cowboys, the guys who are able, there's something there that's so deeply rooted that if you're willing to go out and be hateful toward anybody, I don't care what it is, there's something that's not working right, and that 280 characters in Twitter is not going to change that person. Are you okay to talk about a couple months ago you had like a pretty relentless attack during one of your live streams? Can you talk a little bit about that?
That was difficult for me because we had a guest on. So it was Pride Month, and the year before, like, I really didn't know, and we were so new a year ago that like
everybody's
it didn't get
nice
as much attention.
Right?
Yeah, we didn't get that much attention either, and we've grown a lot since then. I'm really proud of what we've been able to do, and so I knew this year for Pride Month it was going to be different. I knew we'd have a lot more eyeballs than normal, and we didn't have a live stream last year. A live stream is very different than a podcast. It's very different to see active comments than, when it's later. And at first I thought they were just asking a question, and I addressed it. Like I said, I'll come with you with an open hand and have a conversation. And then I was like, oh, okay, this is not that. And then I tried to ignore it, and it just I'm telling you, there's probably like 50, 100, I don't even know. It felt like about 500 comments. I don't think it was that many, but I felt really bad for our guest. They're young. That was the first time we had ever met face to face, and they were Chase, it was Chase that was on there, that gay Jedi. They have a YouTube channel and stuff too, and we had to end it because I didn't know how to get the comments to stop at all. And we're like, afterwards, we're like, do we go back on? What do we do? And we're all like, yeah, we're not going to let these people knock us down. Yeah. So we're like, okay. So we just started up again, and it changed the whole episode, obviously. But the thing that I take away from that more than anything was I couldn't believe the outpouring of support that we got. Like, I was really overwhelmed and really emotional because, again, like I never believed that. And I don't know, I'm just going to say this, hopefully it comes out the right way, but like, I never thought straight people would care enough. I mean, I've experienced way too much trash in my life, to think that we would get this kind of support that we got. And so I choose to not even think about the other thing and just like, wow, like I can't believe that many people. We've grown a lot, and I need to start deprogramming my brain of what's out there, because clearly look at all of this. And, it was a lot. I responded to every single person. I tried to give something meaningful, but it got shared it was shared a lot. It was
I think that's wise to find something positive from that, because, and I think that honestly, that makes it such loss for those that were trying to disrupt it, is to, when you talk to somebody once who said the best payback is winning. And that's kind of, what happened there. I remember I didn't watch the show at the time it was on, but I watched pieces of it, and I responded, and I was taken by that. I'm curious if you think that how much this past year and a half of sort of lockdown and this reliance on social media for people to get through things and or to recognize different things about themselves, do you think that that's helped to grow and expand the community? Maybe that's, I don't know, I'm no expert, but maybe that's some of the things, at least from my perspective, that has opened the door for me to maybe have conversations with people who are different than me or have a different perspective than me, because I realize it's very interesting. It's a much better way to live your life.
1,000%. I mean, it's so funny that attack got us like 500 more followers, and that are still here, like 50 plus listeners that are very engaged listeners. So I'm like, hey, I'm going to take this and say thank you from a a selfish marketing standpoint, whatever. But I do believe, like, I have come to understand as I've gotten older, I'm the type of person who I've always actively sought people out that were very different than me. Yep. I find it interesting. In college, I ended up studying anthropology and human evolution, all these things, I think, because that's always been in the back of my mind. But as I got older, I realized how most people are not like that. However, I do think that changed. I think everyone was lonely. It was really tough. And if you didn't think it was tough, you should probably like figure yourself out, because you were depressed and lonely, because every single one of us was, and it's okay to be sad and lonely, you know? And I think I feel for a little while, I think it brought out the best of what the internet can be and what it should be more often than it is. But I do think people went out and actively sought people that were different than them, you know, for real. I think, and I think Trump changed that, you know, like, I don't know, hopefully I can say that name. I don't know. But like, I think that it awakened a lot of people, you know, good for some that we needed to hear. And I think what happened, and I've been very open about this, I think there was a lot of people who were supportive, but they didn't say anything for lots of different causes, not just the LGBTQ plus cause, but for lots of causes. And I think they realized, I'm not saying anything, and I don't want to be thought of as one of them, if that makes sense. So they started to talk. And I think once people start talking, they realize how important stuff is. You know, that's honestly, it's part of the reason I leave comments on YouTube. I leave comments on Twitter. I addressed all of the problems that we had in that live stream, because it was very evident that this is real. I hear so many times when I talk about things that have happened, you know, people are like, that doesn't happen in real life. Like, no, it does. And you're just saying that we've all read that stuff. That doesn't exist. You're just saying that. I'm like, it doesn't happen to you.
Right.
But it happens. And here it is in black and white, you know? Yeah. So I do feel that I will respect that part of the podcast, you know, that I do think this show has become successful enough to open the eyes of a lot of people that weren't necessarily anti, but they didn't understand to the extent of which things happen, you know?
Yep. And why do you think Star Wars as a platform, and or maybe not why, maybe would you agree with the concept that, I mean, we are having, I'm seeing, at least in the bubble that I live in the echo chamber of social media and Star Wars related, that people are using Star Wars as, I don't know, as a way to express themselves differently. I don't know where I'm going with this, other than this. I know where I'm going with it. I'm just not saying it well. It's this concept of, you know, I just have a podcast. I should be able to speak. But it's this sort of thing where something about Star Wars is now getting us to have different conversations, for better or worse, I think is where I'm going with this. So whether it's, you know, people willing to listen to, you know, it's interesting because people are for some reason believing that now more women are into Star Wars than they ever were before. Well, they always kind of were. They just now have a voice, and they're finding each other, and they're building these wonderful communities around concepts and thoughts, and then creating, whether it's what the story writers intended or not, but creating a place where they can enjoy Star Wars that way. Do you think it's Star Wars, or do you think you think if Star Wars didn't exist, we would find different ways to do this? I guess is where I'm going with it, because it feels like Star Wars is also lending itself to people being ugly and just like resisting change and using Star Wars as their sort of pushback on it. We talked a little bit about Peter Townley when he was on before we got on, and that was the point he was making, was that Star Wars has been around long enough, so now people can say, you know, I don't want to see change, and don't change my Star Wars. I mean, they're not saying I don't want to see change. They're saying don't change my Star Wars, which is kind of the same thing. But what's your perspective on my rambling?
No, I do. I think Star Wars, they have Lucasfilm, Disney, whoever's pulling those strings, I think is getting better. I still think they have a long way to go. They need to start making a stand. But I think as a business, I think they're realizing not making a stand might be damaging them more than actually making a stand. And I think, you know, at the end of the day, they're a business, and that's what they're going to need to do. I was always disappointed that, because I love George Lucas and I love what Star Wars stood for, and Star Wars was very much anti-authoritarian. I'm going to hold my middle finger up to anyone holding me down, and they did lose a little bit of that. which bothers me because I think that attitude has also been ingrained in me, probably because I've been a Star Wars fan my entire life, and Star Wars itself is that's what the rebellion's all about, you know. Yep. But I think Star Wars gets at us on a different level. I think on the surface Star Wars is pew pew pew. I mean, that was actually another reason I started the podcast. You know, I don't mean to disrespect anybody else who's really into this stuff like at all, but I don't care what Star Destroyers, what in the big debate they're using the same Star Destroyer in every video. Like, I don't care. I don't care. I don't pay attention. I don't care about this person. You know, if this person gets that name wrong or this one, you know what I mean? That's not interesting to me. And I know it's interesting to a lot of people, and that's awesome. I wanted to start having the real conversations of what Star Wars can do. And Star Wars is on a human level, on a human to human interaction. What is it that brings you into Star Wars? Like we don't love this thing our entire lives or for 40 plus years because of the pew pew pews. It's because of what's underneath all of that. And Star Wars is, for me, the only thing that can do it the same way it does. You know, I think it teaches people how to have fun and heal themselves in trauma really well, because that's what the movies are all about. It's about healing trauma, but you have a smile on your face the whole time. What a better way to go through life than just have fun and not take it too seriously, no matter how serious it gets. So I think because of that, I mentioned earlier, I think Star Wars is so much about a helmet and we put ourselves in it. And I think it makes you feel very personal, and it invites you to have you own it. You know, it's your story, and it invites you to do that. You bring in the toys, and we can get cynical and talk about marketing. It's just for the money, but it's more than that. Yeah. You know, when I was a little kid, I didn't play with my Star Wars toys. You know, as Luke Skywalker fighting Darth Vader, I remember I was dealing with social issues. I was figuring myself out. I had two guys together. I had a Leia and a Han who weren't allowed to be married because one was black and one was white, and they had to live on the outside of the town. And I invested myself into the story, and that makes it feel really, really personal. Yeah. But it's dangerous to think that your Star Wars is everybody's Star Wars. That's when it's dangerous. And it's also dangerous to feel that you can't share your Star Wars because you don't want to offend somebody else. You know, it has to be an open, there can be no crossed arms, you know? You have to be willing to share and to listen.
I think that's a fantastic one. I think my most frustrating phrase that I've seen in social media is real fans, right? That is a phrase that is, it's I find it disgusting. It just doesn't make sense, because I think what you're saying is 100% right. And this is where Star Wars is. And this is why I think, gosh, you can't open Twitter without seeing a new podcast or something like that related to Star Wars, or because I was saying for a while that it's its own genre, but it's more than that. Look, I have, 12 helmets behind me or whatever the number is, because there's something about and this is why Star Wars toys work, why Star Wars collectibles work, is because, and you just nailed it, and I love that, is you want to own a piece of this universe. You want to be in it. You want to be part of it. And to your point, there are some people who are all about studying the schematics of a Star Destroyer, and there's people who just want to think about, what was it that drove young Luke Skywalker to realize he just needed to get out of where he was. And if you had those in individual buckets, I guess that's why there's different genres of film, but yet Star Wars has captured all those pieces, and this is where we are now, and this is where we have this really interesting sort of collision in social media. And there are going to be people that are going to say, no, Star Wars is Star Destroyers, and some people are going to say, no, Star Wars is romance, and they're both right, but they need to be comfortable with each other.
100%, 100%. I think one of my favorite lessons that I learned, I've been really open. I love my children very much, and my youngest is a super fan. He's the only other one in the house who's a legit super fan and loves it. But it's been really weird for me, and this is going to make me sound like such a horrible parent, but it's been really weird for me to learn how to share Star Wars, because it's it's very personal for me. It's not just a movie. They're not just characters. They are real people. They have had very real effects on me. My husband is a very religious. He's Irish Catholic through and through. And he is the one who early on in our relationship was like, Star Wars is like your religion. You talk about Star Wars like I do Jesus. and he didn't mean it in a condescending sort of way. And, you know, like that can sound so nerdy, but it so much of who I am as a human being is from the lessons that I've learned in Star Wars. And so it's just, it means more to me than just that. But someone who's just casual doesn't mean I love it more or it's more mine than somebody else's. But that, so it's been hard for me to share that thing. But my youngest son, like I said, they're through the foster system, so nothing good brought any of our children to us. And they all, you know, they have trauma that they have to deal with and all of those things. But my youngest, for like a little while, was having a really hard time. He was really, really angry, and quite honestly had every right to be angry, but he had to learn how to express it differently. You know, he was 4. He didn't know how to do that. And we were watching Star Wars, and I was taking him to preschool one day, and he's like, you know, Dad, I think I'm like Darth Vader and Anakin. And sometimes when I get mad, I become Darth Vader because I put the helmet on. But when Darth Vader takes the helmet off, he's Anakin, he's nice. So I have to learn how to take the helmet off.
Wow.
And I mean, I just busted out. I'm sobbing, I'm sure. But like, what a profound thing for a 4-year-old. And that's the power of Star Wars. Like that's beyond the lightsaber. That's beyond how cool, which version of eye lenses does Darth Vader have in this? And they got that screen wrong and they color corrected. That's beyond all of that thing. Right. And to see that transformational power in my little son, who, let me tell you, was never the same after that moment. Like a light bulb went off in his head and he figured something out. And so now, even today, years later, you know, dude, just take the helmet off. And he understands what I'm saying. It's his way to, I'm sorry if I get emotional, but it's his way to help calm himself down. It's just, I'm so thankful to Star Wars. Like, I can never say it enough, and I don't mean it. And then it can sound so nerdy, but it's the truth. I'm so thankful to it and the lessons that it continues to teach, you know, it's amazing.
No, and that's the amazing thing too. You have I was introduced to Star Wars at 7 years old in 1977 from my dad. I am now sharing it with my children. And I think you also, one of the things that I think has been most amazing, and I've seen it a lot lately in just comments from people, whether it's about my show or about just comments about meeting people. And again, back to this 1.5 years of pandemic, it has been a way for people to make connections. And again, I don't know, you know, I would doubt George Lucas was like, I'm going to make something that's going to transcend the world. He had these ideas, and I think he used modern day, or he used classic myth as a way to tell the story. So it worked, it connected, we got it. But it has now led to, and I'm not ashamed to say, I've made some amazing friends that I haven't met yet, just through social media, not met in person, because of Star Wars, and realize that these are where those connections are, right?
Yep. I mean, the people I live stream with are After Dark crew. I have never met a single one of them in person yet. And I have never been more fully seen as a whole entire human being as I am with these people. I can be, as a queer person, we have to learn to move this. I can't do this here. I can't be too gay over here because I'm going to get fired, and I can get fired, and I got healthcare to worry about, and I can't, so I have to hide this. And it's not safe for me to be too gay on this street, so I got to do. And you're always hiding certain things. And I never really realized I was doing that until I met these people. I was like, oh my gosh, I've never been able to be 100% myself all the time. And it's this, I am very grateful for that. It's the most amazing thing. And then they're just like these kind human beings that have just, quite frankly, made me a better person, meeting these people. I'm like, oh God, you're just amazing people. So I feel you 100%.
Yeah. And I think we are in a spot now where, and I think you said it best, and I need to be better about ignoring that negative shell that tries to break into this world, and just kind of, in a way, I don't want to be condescending and saying it's kind of sad that that's the way they view Star Wars, but it's unfortunate. But I think the way I've looked at it, and it's been difficult. I remember having conversations on early episodes of my podcast with people about it, is I like to believe that it's coming from a place of passion, and other than the ugliness, right? I mean, because there's so much of that, and we've seen it in every sector. But people who are kind of considered gatekeeping, I like to believe that it's because they just care so much about this, and it's uncomfortable, and people deal with, and as somebody who has grown up with, I'm sure when you come out to some of your friends or did, it was an awkward situation for them and for you. Similar situation here is, wait a minute, this is my Star Wars. What do you do? How can I share this with you if you don't love Star Destroyer schematics, which I don't know why I'm stuck on that, but if you don't if you don't love that, then how do you love the same thing I do? And I think if maybe that's the message of Star Wars, right? Is like it's about finding, it's found family, it's found middle ground. We can find something there.
I guess for me, like, I don't need to love the schematics as much as you do. I love that you love them. Tell me why you love it.
Right.
It doesn't, we as a society and maybe as human beings, like, one has to be above the other one. They can't both be sitting on the same, like, really? And every time I always go to, like, I hope you're not married, because I hope your spouse or partner or boyfriend or girlfriend, like, I hope you don't think one of you needs to be above the other one. Like, that to me seems like you can be, two things can exist at the same level. Two can be 100%. It's totally fine. And just enjoy the fact that you both love Star Wars. Like, just talk about Star Wars and listen to someone, I'll listen to someone talk about schematics. Yeah. It's great. And the gatekeeping thing, I was like, do you not watch Star Wars? Yeah. Because I agree with you. I think it's from this place of passion, but did they not, no one's going to deny that Anakin loved Padme.
Yeah.
He loved her. He did everything for love. But he was controlling it. He was possessing that love. It's not, if you really love something, you have to have your hand open. You can't have your hand shut. You have to risk that it might go away. That's what Anakin was never one. And the Jedi, they're the ones who screwed that up for him. But like, to really love something, you have to be open-handed and run the risk that it might go away. And that's scary and it's vulnerable. That is something that I've started to bring into the show more, is just be really, really authentic. And I feel a responsibility to that. I think because we have so many people who don't have our shared experience, that I really have to be open and honest, because I do feel it has turned into a responsibility of, I have this moment to share something. I'm having a common conversation with you because of Star Wars, but I can bring in this over here and maybe you'll listen a little bit differently. We've been attacked a few times by some other podcasts, unfortunately, for being too positive and not using our platform the right way. And I'm like, I'm using what I've got the way I want to use it. You do what you need to do. Your voice is just as needed as mine. This doesn't need to be a competition, but I try to have fun and laugh a lot. I laugh just as much as I cry on our show, because I think through laughter and through fun, that's the message of Star Wars. That's what I was saying, at the beginning of the thing. That's very Star Wars, is let's hit some difficult things and laugh along the way. Yeah. And if people have fun and like you, I believe they're more willing to listen to the things that they may or may not agree with, or be open to things of going, oh, I think I used to feel that way, but I've heard it differently than I did before, and maybe I don't need to feel that way anymore.
Yeah, and I love the way, and I like to believe that there's some genius happening in the writing room, and I think there probably is, because I think one of the best lines in Star Wars happened in Bad Batch recently, when Tech said, "Just because I understand you doesn't mean I'm agreeing with you," and that is something I feel like. I almost feel like that was like Dave Filoni saying, "Hey, Twitter, listen up. You don't have to agree with everybody on everything that's going on." And to me, that's like the key message. And maybe that's a message for today more so. And that's why Star Wars continues to work.
Yeah. And and if you're on the podcast, I was nodding very, very vigorously, because I agree so much. I think we talked about that for like 45 minutes, that line. And then Hunter also backs it up at the end of like, just because we don't agree doesn't mean we have to be enemies. Like, it is, those are such important, powerful powerful messages that are, again, that's beyond Star Wars, man. That's beyond the pew pew pews. Like, let it in. It's profound. And I love that Bad Batch is written for kids in quotes. But they talk about those things, like, I don't think Star Wars is for kids. I know what George Lucas, I know that quote. I think it's misquoted a lot. I think it's written for the child in all of us. And it's not the child as in you're 12 and under. It's, we all have an innocence. It's written to the innocence that's in all of us human beings still, that gets kicked out and beaten down as we grow older. But we can hold on to that. I think kids are powerful, man. Like, I mean, I've learned so much from my children. I was older when we had them. They were all older when they came to us. They had a history. They had that they brought to our lives, and as a dad, they had a lot of bad stuff, like I said, and I've done everything I can to take it off. I'll take it. Let me take it away from you, and I'll hold it. Yeah, I'll hold it for you so you can go and be free. But man, kids they take it for what it is, man. That's something that I think every parent should look at their child, and before you correct a kid, listen to why they're saying what they're saying, because they're the ones who haven't been beaten down yet. And they're probably more truthful than we ever will be. And I think that's the child that George Lucas talks about with Star Wars. I think that man is a really beautiful human being who created this really beautiful story and teaches us really important lessons and brings us back to those times when we weren't going to say no to anything because we could believe in anything. We could believe in, we could believe in a person. My kids come home. I made a new friend at school today, Daddy. What's their name? I don't know. I'm like, oh my God. How amazing is that, though? Like,
I love that.
I don't need to know anything more.
Man, yeah, that is great. I have to say, my son is done, and I'm like, yeah, because you look at it like as an adult, like the first thing you ask, okay, so what's your name? Okay, good, we can go on now from there.
Yes.
But they're like, oh, I didn't even think of that. Like that wasn't important because we were connected. We had something going on.
Exactly. I saw the person inside. I didn't need to know it was on the surface. It's so powerful. I think.
Yeah. I shared this on an episode a while ago. But my son, he just turned 9, and he's a Clone Wars because, like, I came into Star Wars through movies, and everybody's coming through their own thing. And my son came in through Clone Wars, loves Clone Wars. Like his Luke Skywalker and Han Solo are Rex and Fives and Echo, and like that. He loved like the rest of Star Wars to him, like the 9 movies. That's backstory. Like that doesn't matter. Like this is his thing. And so I made the assumption that he knew that the clones turned. Right? I just made that assumption because I grew up with this. Like it's like when I was coaching his Pee Wee baseball team, I made the assumption all the kids knew to run to first base first. They don't, by the way. When they're 6 years old, they have no idea where to go. But so I made that assumption that he knew Star Wars because he watched it, and we watched the episode, the season 7. And I'm sitting with him, and they get Order 66, and the clones turn, and his little 8-year-old face, because he was 8 at the time, he was shocked. And he turned to me, and you were saying like these little lessons we get from our kids. He turns to me, he goes, they were killing all the robots before, but now they're just robots. And I was like, holy cow, like, how did you come up? Like, but it, like, you realize, and that's why, from a pure storytelling standpoint, if I put on just my storyteller hat, this is why Star Wars works, because everybody has their I am your father moment. My daughter's I am your father moment was actually the prequels when Palpatine unveiled himself as Darth Sidious, and my daughter turned to me and said, I knew there wasn't something right about that guy. And I was like, oh, like to me, oh, well, it's Ian McDiarmid. It's the same guy. But to her,
we knew it long before the first one even started. We knew.
Well, when the casting came out, we knew where this was going.
Exactly.
But but Star Wars gives you those moments. And I think what's cool about it is, and from a teaching a child a lesson perspective, whether intentionally or otherwise, it's giving you these enough to love a character and then make them face something. And Omega is going to be an amazing character long term. She's already, we've seen her grow so much in 16 episodes rather. And she's just like, that's the kind of thing. And those are the characters that I'm going to be that guy and say, like, people who don't enjoy Bad Batch is the way I'll put it. Like, they point a finger as this is just another little girl character or another little child character. But you need that, and she's so important. It sounds like you are a huge Bad Batch fan.
Well, Clone Wars is my favorite Clone Wars. I love the Clone Wars, and I think for me, it's the foundation that all of Star Wars sits on.
Mm-hmm.
I think it has a higher bar than even the original trilogy does these days. Now, it couldn't be there without the original trilogy. I get it, but sure. I think it set the bar of what Star Wars can and should be. I think there's no filler. It gives you a break. It gives you a break every once in a while because that show slaps really hard with the emotions, man. Sometimes you need to see some droids wandering through space because you got to process all the stuff that happened, and you need to clear your emotions for what's about to come. But Bad Batch really was fascinating because I had a very similar experience with Michael, my youngest, and he was so confused the whole series of why the clones were doing bad things, and he's like, "But they're good guys. Why are the clones now shooting each other?" They're and I said, sometimes people make bad choices, and sometimes people listen to the wrong person, and you have to be like the Bad Batch. You have to be like them and hold your ground and do the right thing because it's the right thing no matter who's telling you that's the wrong thing. You have to trust your gut and know you're doing the right thing because you're a good person. And hopefully some of those clones will come around. We have to, and hopefully we'll get to see some of those clones and be able to forgive them, because that's an important lesson too. But, I'm iffy on Bad Batch. That was another really queer coded show. Like the whole Bad Batch, they're all gay. They're all gay. They all have our experience of literally, one of the things that's interesting as a queer person that I think has really shaped my worldview and found family is integral to the queer community. A lot of us lose our family and we are kicked out when we're sometimes too young, and we find each other and we take care of each other. And it's interesting with allyship in the queer community is a really important thing because I think a lot of people want to be a queer ally, but because we look like everybody, something I hear too often, and I know it comes from a good place, so I'm never mad about it, when I'm not gay, but I have friends that are, or I'm not gay, but I support them. But you make sure that someone, you know what I mean? Because we look like everybody else. Anyone can be us. Mm-hmm. And the Bad Batch went through that, they looked just like all the other clones, but they were different. And then the other clones started making these decisions, and then the government and the Jedi and the church started kicking them out because they were too different. I'm like, that is the gay experience. We look just like everybody else, but something's making us different. We don't always exactly know what it is. Could be that we don't have an inhibitor chip. It could be that it is a little malfunctioning. Who knows? But I did enjoy watching that show through that perspective. It just went on a little too long.
I can't disagree. I think, but I think, and I'm so glad that we had this conversation so I can understand that a little bit more, that whole coding concept, because again, I think, look, if Star Wars came out, I think we can both be as open-minded as possible. But just the very reaction that the two women kissing at the end of The Rise of Skywalker caused, and that you had to look for that. You had to be like, somebody had to tell you, okay, it's going to happen now, and there it is, right? And the reaction that caused, which was insane to me.
I hate that thing. It's the shut up kiss. That's what I call it.
That's explain.
The shut up kiss. We gave it to you. We gave it to you, gays. Stop complaining. Stop complaining. Storm pilot's not going to happen. Not going to happen, but it's over here.
And yet, and that's why. Tell me if I'm right or wrong on this, but that's what's so damaging about that, right? It sounds like it was offensive to the LGBTQ community. At the same time, it was offensive to people that were offended by that sort of thing. And so nobody won. And it's not about winning or losing, but nobody was happy, I guess, is a better way to put it.
Look, I don't want to go in and think that. Well, one thing I hate about Twitter and people with a Star Wars YouTube channel or a podcast is they think they understand Star Wars better than the people writing it, or that they are like somehow superior writers or filmmakers. Like, I'm not that, right? Like, I don't want to claim to be that. But when people talk about needing more people in the writer's room, it's moments like that. It's moments like Rose Tico being taken out because, I don't know what to do with that character. but you took this character that had never been in a Star Wars before and made that one not to know what to do. Well, then you need to work harder to figure out what it is, because that character means a lot to something, right down to the actors. Like, for a while, I was really mad at both John Boyega and Oscar Isaac, to be totally honest, because they played into it. I was like, they made it. That's what they were. And then it didn't happen. And it took me a while. And then I watched The Rise of Skywalker again, because I have not seen that movie a ton of times. But the last time I watched it, I was like, oh no, they played that they were a couple that entire movie. So Disney may have said no. Lucas, and I don't think it was Lucasfilm that said no. I really don't. Disney may have said no, but that wasn't going to stop them. And I think they played those characters that way anyway. So when I watched that, they are a couple.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not necessarily a couple I want to be in, because they argue too much for my taste, but they are a couple, and yeah, they give you this little kiss. They promised us this gay thing. You know how many times I've been promised about it, like Green Lantern being gay, and then it's some Green Lantern from Earth 891721 that was on a panel and one thing. Like, it's just, you want my money, but you're not willing to risk what might come with it. And it's just insulting, because here I am every day. I have to live my life being afraid of what might happen.
Yeah.
And you're just gonna treat me like I'm nothing, and it's, then just don't say anything at all. I mean, there's gay porgs in The Last Jedi, but no one talked about them, but they're there. And that's a lot more respectful to me, I think, than that. And then to make it worse, you give this Poe this old time girlfriend.
Yeah.
And you're so narrow-minded that somehow that means that he's not going to be gay. Well, gay people do exist, and some of them like men and women. So that didn't actually ruin the idea that Finn and Poe could be together. It just added another layer of complexity, and actually gave representation to another group of queer people that are oftentimes ignored. So in that mindset, I'm like, thank you.
Do you think we are getting better? Not, I say we like I'm writing the stories, but do you think stories in general are getting better at being respectful, or is it still? Do you still feel like we're in a world where it's kind of the all right, well, we'll throw him a bone, we'll give him this one, or do you feel like we're getting better there?
Well, I mean, I hope I'm coming across as a half full glass of milk, pink milk kind of guy. So I would like to say yes. I do think, but I think it's the audience. And I'm telling you, I am very thankful to our listeners who are straight, who listen, because we are Nick from Podcast of the Wills is in the chat room. Yep. Huge supporter of us, huge. Matt and Sean from Blue Bantha Milk, and we are very gay. We hold nothing back. We hold nothing back about, especially after dark. When my husband's not around, it can get very thirsty. It can get very probably, let's be honest, PG-13 rated. We don't really go too bad, but it can get saucier, and but people still listen. And I think what Disney and Lucasfilm are missing is that it isn't just the pink dollar that wants to see LGBTQ representation. I think it's everyone. I think it's all people want to see different kinds of people's stories, because we're tired of, we were stuck in our house for 2 years during quarantine, and we all realized how boring our life was. So I want to go see what somebody else's life is like. And I think that's what they're missing. I think I appreciate, I guess, because I have to maybe, but I appreciate what J.J. Abrams and Chris Terrio tried to do, maybe. But what needs to start happening is there are people behind the scenes do need to start getting a seat at the table. Unfortunately, there are people who don't want to let go of that seat. So to me, I'm just build a bigger table then. Yeah, just build a bigger table and buy some chairs. Just add some more seats. We don't need to take somebody away. Yeah. But I think those kinds of voices would acknowledge, hey, but this is going to be a problem. Val, if someone was sitting there, you don't do that to the one character. You don't do that. That just, if she needs to go, figure it a different way, but don't do that. Don't treat Rose that way. Don't just put in two ladies kissing that don't mean anything to the story just to say you did it. Cause it's more insulting than not being there at all, because now I just feel placated too. And it just made me feel less than. I'm really? You know what I mean?
Yeah. It makes a lot of sense. And I think you're right. And you said something really interesting that I think more people who feel just the word woke makes my stomach turn, but people who like to believe that I think when you break down, right, people who who are racist or bigoted or misogynist, it's coming down to they're afraid of something being taken away from them. And I think if more people understood exactly what you just said, which I've always kind of known in my head, but to hear you say it, it makes a lot of sense. We're not saying, hey, get rid of the white straight men at the table. It's let's bring in just another voice that we can listen to. And I think that's really, really important. And again, I think I'd like to believe, and I'm so hopeful that my kids, your kids, and all the kids right now who are growing up are going to grow up in a world that's a little bit more understanding. I wish they could keep that I don't even know his name way of playing with people and being comfortable with that and just being like, okay, cool. That's what you like. That's great. This is what I like. Can we play together? Yes, we're good. And I think we need more of that. Yeah.
100%. I think, as a dad now, I understand how I didn't know how important. I'm going to be totally honest. I did not know how important representation was until I started the podcast. I just didn't think it was ever going to happen. My husband and I have been together for almost 14 years now. Like we are literally living a life that we didn't think was going to ever be possible for ourselves. And so I am thankful every single day. One, that we can actually, I worked real hard for this ring. I've been beaten up. I've had literally I marched on the Capitol in the 90s. I did all, I've experienced things for that. I didn't think it was going to be for me. I thought it was going to be for somebody after, and then to be able to adopt children as not one as a step parent, but we're both on their birth certificates is a lot has changed really fast. I just had a conversation with my father and it's interesting. And it's hard to talk about because my dad in one hand is really supportive and, my husband, Tom, is just a part of the family. He's his son, but he comes into the house still and says some of these things sometimes of why do people need to rub it in people's face? You hear that all the time. Well, I support gay people. You just don't need to throw it in my face. And my dad came into my house, mind you, I wasn't even in his house. He was in my house and came in and was like, well, I just don't understand why people have to throw it in people's faces. I'm like, but Dad, what do you mean by throwing it in your face? Well, I don't know, just throw it in my face. And they just say what they hear, right? Because they don't want to actually think about it.
Yep.
I'm like, well, I'm going to tell you what throwing it in their face means. It means dropping my husband off at the store and giving him a kiss goodbye. Or God forbid, we stand too close to one another in the grocery store. Or God forbid, we take a family picture together at the park, just like everybody else. Or God forbid, we sit next to each other. Like that to those people is me throwing in their face. They're allowed to do it, but we're not. And a lot has changed really quickly. So I guess I can understand the whiplash effect. You know what I mean? So I always try to be patient, which is again, to bring it back to that, I try to have an open hand of maybe I'm the first person, maybe I'm the first gay person that's going to give someone a listen. I was a guest on someone's podcast once and this person sent an email to me later and had said they were a really religious person, basically, and they were really conservative, and they didn't think they liked gay people. They and listening, they're like, I just saw you as a person. And it was the first time I've ever been able to and he's like, I hope you don't hate me for saying this, but I felt the need to because something changed. And I don't know where I'm going to go with it, but something changed. And that stuff that's some life-changing stuff, Yeah. So I try to be respectful and meet someone where they are. Right. I wish you could be farther sometimes, but you know what? I'm also 42 and I'm not as far as some people are. Yeah. So no matter, we're always going to be not enough for someone, if that makes sense. Yeah. And we just have to understand that, I think. And I think we have to embrace that within ourselves and be okay with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think, part of it comes down to just sort of things that are ingrained in people's heads since they're born and the way that they're raised. And again, it's that I can understand you and not agree with you. And I think you do need that caveat though that says, I don't have to agree with you, but I don't have the right to be a jerk to you about it either. Right?
You need to listen to one another.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yep.
That's it.
Well, Bryan, this has been awesome. If people want to listen to more and get more of your perspectives, where can they find you online?
You can follow me at Serving Pink Milk on Twitter and Instagram, but mostly Twitter. And then we have a podcast, Pink Milk. that comes out on Wednesdays, where I talk with my husband, who is not a super fan and is forced to listen to me for the last 14 years. And then every Friday late night right here on YouTube. Or if you're on the podcast, I guess you're not right here on YouTube. Go to YouTube on Friday nights and listen to Pink Milk After Dark. And that's 4 of us now, and we're all super fans. We all are queer, and we just talk about Star Wars from our perspectives and all the kinds of things we're talking about tonight. We also have a lot of fun, and sometimes just get stupid.
I feel like that's the most important thing on a Friday night, especially. Just get stupid and have some fun. Well, Bryan, this was great. Thank you so much for joining us.
I appreciate it very, very much. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Cool. All right. So before I hit stop, I'm going to ask you to give me this is Bryan from Pink Milk, and you're listening to Around the Galaxy.
This is Bryan from Pink Milk, and you are listening to Around the Galaxy. Did I do that right? Did I sound like you?
That was perfect. Yeah. That was great. All right. Let me